From the Washington DC area, all empowered citizens need to know about intelligent use of resources, smart governance, inclusive communities, smart industry, and healthy, thriving urbanization. This is Smart Sustainability, the TV talk about shaping a sustainable future in the digital age with Nicolette DeVidar. Arts, emotions, and difficult times ahead. Welcome to Smart Sustainability on this Sunday, August 8, 2021. How can art help us navigate the chaos we're in, stop from becoming a newly segregated society, and yes, we are in danger of becoming one, and transcend towards wisdom to get to a space where we can build a beautiful and sustainable life ahead for all of us? Our topic tonight, good evening, thanks for joining us. I'm Nicolette DeVidar. What do art, science, and philosophy actually have in common with sustainability? A legitimate question, particularly given the state societies around the world are currently in. Protests, brutality, clashes, homelessness on the rise. It seems science has become the new god, arts has become something on the periphery, and philosophy, faith, well, that's quite on yet another track. All that is not just pertaining to COVID, lockdowns, the mass hysteria that seems to divide people further, leaving reason and the only a few months ago touted concept of inclusion far behind. Instead, what we see is people on all sides acting upon raw emotion, fear, and the need for control. It seems we're all stuck, and this is where we all err, and fall for the trap of those who fuel division. Today, when someone is of a different opinion, immediately the mob says the person may be a conspirator, a negator of truth. Some in power, like President Macron of France, for example, are pitting civil liberties against social responsibility. None of this could be further from the truth. If you ask people who speak up as to why they don't want to be vaccinated, for example, you may be surprised that many have a reason. That's just one example. What becomes evident in all of this, though, is a very different worldview. One that sees the physical human and life where it is now as the end of all things, and another that sees that there is more to the body, a spiritual component, a unity of the visible and the invisible. It's actually a little bit similar to the Inquisition, when at the time the church went after mostly women who practiced alternative healing arts, who believed that everything has a soul, who had ancient knowledge of how the spiritual manifests in the physical. So why am I talking about all of this? Because going through chaos, fear, manipulation, different worldviews, there's one thing that unites everyone. A place where form and spirit meet. Beauty. Beauty makes the heart sing and the skin radiant. It's present in music, in poetry, in architecture, literature, arts, and across all disciplines. It vibrates with wisdom and divine energy and captures our hearts in stillness, majesty, and simply wonder. Beauty, particularly in the form of arts, form an antidote to fear, turbulence, and uncertainty. See why we need to talk about it? Bringing more of it into our lives to become sustainable going forward. Arts is an invisible force that lifts the human spirit to a different realm. Something that transcends all of our physical bodies. Something that gets us to a higher level. Something in us that we all share, no matter where you stand. Art is what touches that divine spark, and in unison with science and philosophy makes the difference between a human and a robot. Now, art is the opposite of nature, yet their relationship to each other is what makes art beautiful and nature the perfect art. So how does art capture our emotion, help us express it, integrate the paradoxes, and transcend the I, the ego, and the physical state? How can we transform emotions, use the arts to navigate the difficult times we're in? Things to talk about with Catherine Bond. She's a musician by hobby, a public health scientist by profession, who is exploring how she herself can at times bring the two parts together. We have Richard Malone, a renowned baritone and opera singer who uses his voice to feel and express emotions. We got Bill Protzman, a pianist and innovator of using music as self-care and transformation tool. We got Richard Kunicki, he's author of The Crucifixion of Capital, Envisioning a World Beyond Money. And we got Signe Miranda. She's a singer, songwriter, author, and songwriting coach. She released 3 solo albums and wrote The Song Creation Formula, 7 easy steps to writing your song. Welcome all of you on Smart Sustainability. It's great to have you on.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And actually, I will let our audience know this today we're going really with an ad hoc show, because I had originally planned to do a different topic, and then things happen, and sometimes I think you just call it synchronicity. So we did feel there was a need to talk about arts and emotions and how we can use it actually to navigate the difficult times ahead. So, which is right in the spirit of transformation, of course, and going with the flow. All right, I'm going to start with you, Kate. You're a scientist and you're a musician. Do you struggle sometimes in bringing those two parts of yourself together?
It's a really important aspect. I think we have to consider these dimensions of ourselves, and also how they play out in our minds and brain. And as a musician growing up, as a child who played sort of consistently, my inclination was always sort of music as a way of connecting to other people. And we learned how to listen. We learned how to play in harmony and how to play in sync with others. And those are aspects of music education and development that we can take into any realm of profession that we go into. As a public health scientist, we're really concerned with solving specific problems. So in the current time, we have a historic pandemic that really requires all of the tools of science and that have been laid out in sort of with remarkable speed and accuracy and availability. But where I think the two meet goes back to this point of connection. We aren't always able to reach others. Messages from public health take on different meanings and significance. They become formulated within identities that people have that then, as you say, can be very opposed to each other. And I see music and art as really a way of making that human connection. When I have in my own career worked towards specific public health problems, and I've been able to play music with people in those contexts, all that breaks down. It's a bridge. And that's what then allows us to sort of establish trust and that common language, which opens up the channels to really be able to solve problems together in a very different kind of way.
So you actually took some of the question I had already a little bit here ahead of time. So as I was going to ask you, what does the scientist say to the role of arts?
Well, the science now is increasingly pointing to the benefits that arts and music have in our cognition. Playing music actually switches on all or many quadrants of the brain, between rhythm and the kinesthetics and the kind of emotional flow, as well as the structure and learning that music provides that we can then translate into our more analytical minds. So it's an interesting evolution, and I think the more scientists who study music and music in the mind, the more we'll be able to embrace the two together. I think the professions tend to isolate the two. So there are many medical doctors, many scientists who are brilliant musicians, but our lives are separate in the way that we live them out. And I think it presents a really interesting kind of opportunity to find new ways that actually integrate them.
To merge them, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Which brings me right to Richard Malone. Richard, art is the link perceived between the inner worlds and the outer worlds. And I know we've had discussion on that in terms of how does the voice actually serve, so to speak, as a gateway, if you want, to bring the feelings, the emotions that are in there out to really out to the outside world.
Okay. May I call you Nicolette?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on your show. I would say it starts from your teacher. For me, it started with my teacher, and they came from Germany and Austria, and they were Jewish, and they couldn't perform. They were conductors and pianists, great conductors. And they couldn't perform in Germany, so they went to Italy. There's opera in Italy. And then Mussolini hooked up with Hitler, and they went to London. And then they bombed London. And all 5 of them, which is my book, is all about them. And this is the cover of my book. Maybe you can see some of it. Those are all the roles that I performed thanks to them. Yes. And they're very famous people. They became great conductors here in the United States. All of them were my teachers, and they told me I was a Helden character baritone, the 2nd highest paid singer in Germany. I never knew this. I come from Coney Island. And Coney Island, the word Coney means rabbits. And there was a lot of rabbits there when the Dutch came in 1600 and named it Coney. And it's the very first entertainment area of the United States. So this is my upbringing, okay? And what I could tell you is because of a Helden character baritone, I sing all the bad guys because my voice is very low. And in all the operas. Now, opera's not difficult. This just happens to be in foreign languages, Italian, French, German. And there is one opera, and there's many of them, where you have live happenings in it. And it's called Verismo. And Puccini, Leoncavallo, Mascagni, the great Italian composers, wrote about it. And there's one aria, which is a song that I sing in a concert. And
hang on. I'm going to get there. We're not quite there. We'll play it in a little bit, Richard. I wanted to do the lead in here first so we can all follow. Talk to us a little bit, please, about how you managed to bring what's in you with your voice to the external. And the reason why I'm asking is actually very, very easy. So I know when I started even coaching for the broadcasting voice or the television voice, yes. I learned that you need to build a bridge to use the chest voice differently. So you have different tones, which you so beautifully showed, Richard, before when you started your baritone, you went really low. So,
I'm very fortunate to have you as a colleague. We're both TV producers now. And you're going to come on my show, Communicating Today with the Arts.
Yes, but what I was getting to is that there is this gateway of your voice that you sort of need to open up so you can really feel the emotions and let them out. Talk to us about that a little bit.
It's utilizing what God, our Creator, gave you. Is to know where the voice is. Now, when you can get the voice out of your throat and put it into the mask. And that's what these teachers taught me to do. Your voice goes higher, lower, and wider. But then you have to get vibrations. And especially as a bass, you need to vibrate. Here, I'm showing this to you. You need to vibrate your body. It's like a bass player. So you have to open up the doorway that I tried to tell you to your body and bring your body tone into it. Do you hear me doing it?
Yes.
All right. So, and so there's a head tone, there's a tone in the mask. And I started as a boy soprano at 9 years old, singing "Oh Holy Night" at Christmas time in a big cathedral church in Brooklyn. And today I'm as I said, a Helden character baritone. And so it's a matter of knowing where your voice is and how to open up and to utilize your body. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So the voice becomes part of your entire body. It makes a lot of sense. And I think we all need to kind of, if you really go into the emotions, that's kind of like what brings it out. I will say though, singing I find easier than speaking to bring this out. However, let's talk about the singing. I want to move on here to Signe for a moment. Signe, you're a songwriter. You write about how do you bring out what's in you in two ways. So one with the music and then the other through words. Talk to us about what is your essential piece in doing this?
Well, a few years ago, I started doing some songwriting workshops, and I discovered that a lot of the people who were interested in doing this were people who have never written a song before, don't play an instrument, and generally don't sing. So we tried different creative ideas on how to bring the lyrics out first, because if you haven't been a singer and you're a little uncomfortable, then it helps to have the lyrics out first. So creative ideas, throwing words together, coming up with topics, and then getting some lyrics out. And then I had this one student who said, well, I don't know how to sing. And I said, well, can you hum? And she started humming. And I said, well, you know, it sounds like what you're humming fits the lyrics you wrote. Why don't you replace the humming with...
I think we lost the internet connection. We just lost the humming with the internet connection, but I actually do have... Are you back on, Signe? I think we lost it. So, all right, we're going to move on here. So we go straight to Bill. Bill, since you're on there as well, you use music as a transformative tool, and you keep saying that music is transformative. Tell us how you feel about it.
I think that, Richard, I think you said it. We have this range of emotion, and we're taught this range. It's very small, but musicians are taught a larger range, and we have to have a more of a depth in what we feel in order to be able to be authentic when we bring that on stage and show people. And I think the transformation that you're after here, Nicolette, is helping people to know it's safe. You know, emotions can be scary, let's face it. If you haven't experienced big ones, the first time you do, they can really grab you. But they're just chemicals, basically. Kate can talk about how the chemicals work in the brain and the body to create the things we experience as emotion. And they will pass. The trouble is that we keep tamping them down. We feel something we don't want, and we push it away and say, no, I don't want to feel that. Don't feel that now. And in my experience, for example, I was pretty depressed as a kid, and it wasn't until I got to therapy that the therapist said, Bill, you're an angry young man. I said, what? Yeah, I'm not an angry young man. What's wrong with that? Hang on a second, airplane.
So talk to us a little bit. We actually,
I can pick that thought up and just finish it really quick, because once you understand that you, as a resonator, as a human being, can feel these things and that they're okay, they're natural, they're normal part of what we feel, then you can begin to step into them with more of a sense of agency and ownership, where you can say, oh yes, I am, as a matter of fact, angry right now, and this will pass, right? It's not a requirement to act on it, but it is a very definite requirement to feel it fully and allow that feeling to be present within you instead of stuffing it or trying to ignore it or push it away. So music is a fantastic way of allowing that to take place. And then as you realize that these feelings are available to you and that they are transient, they come and go, you begin to transform into a much more fully realized individual than you were when you said, no, I'm not going to feel that because it's too scary or it's too sad or whatever. And you can own those things and take them with you into a much more rich experience of life.
So do we all have to be totally open? And that question goes to all of you, by the way. So do we all have to be completely open to feel the feelings? Is the problem that sometimes we live in such a fragmented society and such a fragmented life that so often we've suppressed most of the feelings that we actually have difficulties to feel it first before we can even come to express it? Who wants to go first?
I'll try it.
All right, go.
I'll just say, yeah.
Go.
Who's going first?
Richard Malone, I guess you already started. Let's go.
All right, you have to remember I'm a classical actor. And I've been in over 100 performances, different roles. And yes, you have to, when you're singing Italian opera, you're singing about love and hate and jealousy and death. These are all the things that goes on in opera. Now, if you're singing French opera, you're singing more of nature. And then if you're singing German opera, which I do, you're singing maybe about a ring or myths or mythology or something. But you as an actor have got to find the truth in the role that you're playing, and you have to express it. And so, as I told you, I played over 100 different kinds of roles in opera, operetta, musicals, and even church and synagogue singing, because they have concerts all the time. And so you make a living at that. And so you have to play a part in an opera. And they call upon you with the directors to be believable. You have to find the truth in the role that you're playing. And as you'll play in a little while, there is La Boheme. And in La Boheme, I play the part of the poet, Collini, and he has to sell his coat because Mimi's dying and they don't have any money. And it's winter time and he's selling, and it's the Verismo type of school where you're actually singing real life happenings to an object. So I'm singing a coat aria to my dear coat.
So let me ask you something though.
What?
You have to also know what emotion you basically attribute with a certain feeling. Now, what emotion, out of curiosity, do you attribute with death?
Well, all right. I just found out this morning that my oldest brother died. Okay? And here I am on the show with you. Death comes into knowing what's going to happen when you die. And we have God who tells us this. We know that there's going to be a time when we have a God of retribution. If you do good, you're going to be rewarded. If you don't, you're going to have a penalty. Well, how long is this penalty? And if you study and read the books, it's probably 1 year. So it depends. So you die today. My brother did this morning. And I know the way things are getting on the earth today, and you're picking it out. You're talking about a pandemic. You're talking about jealousies. You're talking about all kinds of things that's happening to human beings. It's not supposed to be that way. So maybe it could be a spiritual thing that's happening, and prepare yourself for death. So what is death? Death is only a year's time, and you're going to pay for your penalty, and you're going to live again. This is the promises that I was taught.
Yeah, well, that's how you interpret it, right? So, but I understand the point.
I'm not only interpreted, I was told by rabbis, and there's a certain song that you could sing. They call it the Mourner's Kaddish. At every priest, Buddhist, Hindu, Jew, rabbi say at the death, at the cemetery. Yep. And in that prayer, it has nothing to do with death. It has the promises of God.
Oh, I personally agree with you, but I do know there are different opinions, and we leave it up to people to come up with their own opinions, of course, and their own experiences. Signy, are you back on since we lost you before? I want to pick up where you left it before. Can you hear us? Signy, can you hear us, or Richard Kiernicki?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so Signy, I want to come back to you here for a second, because you were cut off before you said how you would express your emotions, because you put them in songs, you put them in music, and we stopped at the humming. Now, for you, when you express your emotions, do you automatically attribute a certain feeling to a certain notion you want to get across, or do you really just feel, how do you mix them together?
Well, it's interesting. You were talking earlier about how sometimes we need to identify the emotion before we can express it. Yeah. And I found sometimes it's the opposite way around as well. When I first started writing songs, I would just write them stream of consciousness. They would come from, I guess, that universal subconscious mind where our thoughts come from. And I would express the song, and I would think, well, where did that come from? And then I would look into it and realize, oh, I guess that's what I was feeling about this certain situation. And it came out through the music and through the way I was singing the song and through the lyrics. So sometimes sometimes the expression of the emotion allows us to understand the emotion.
Yeah, so it works both ways. I do want to play a little video actually that we have. We have a teaser from Bill's program that he uses for the music transformation. So I would love to play this for a second and give you, our audience, the idea of what to expect and how to tap into those emotions. And then we'll talk about how we can transform that. Let's play the video first. That was actually just a teaser that Bill has prepared for a program he does to help you or someone else who's interested use music as a transformative tool to transform emotions. And actually go through it from both sides, as we just heard. So one way to identify the emotions, and then the other to get in tune with your emotions and then in a way express it, which kind of builds a story arc. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about now moving forward. So we have all these things that are going on in the world. We have more and more, really, it kind of crystallizes itself as two sides. We have, on the one hand, some people are very locked into seeing how life is and how life evolves from a very specific point of view. And then we have others who say exactly on the opposite. So the arts is the one that brings this all out. And you talked about this so beautifully, Kate, in terms of engaging all of the brain, etc. But here's the thing. So what actually makes all of us be touched by music, by a beautiful painting, by a beautiful text, in a way that just that inspires just the awe? Do you want to take a stab at this?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about what I understand and experience. I can say from my own experience, the awe has come as a violinist playing the Handel Messiah and hearing this majestic sound around me. That was probably one of the first times in my life as a young teen that I had an inkling into what a really spiritual experience felt like. It came from the sound, it came from the harmony, it came from all of the sound waves merging. It was this sense of being a small child in the midst of something well beyond, even beyond the musicians in the room. And I think when we consider our ability to bridge across perspectives, why certain kinds of music or art resonate with some people over others, rooted obviously in our cultural traditions and cultural expressions and forms of expression, but also in our experiences, in our early life experiences. So we'll have sentiments associated with certain songs or music because of the memories attached to the time when we heard that kind of song or music. And I think, we've talked in previous shows about where are the switches of empathy that happen in the mind in a young person's development. And often that happens in song. And today we're seeing this whole genre of bedroom music, of young creative people who've been staying inside in their rooms, living their lives on Zoom, and coming up with really incredible creations that actually blend different genres, where we really start to see innovation. So I think what that does is it speaks not just to the power that sound and that shared experience has when we're together, but it speaks to the ingenuity that people can bring into challenging times in their lives, and the importance of creating and expressing their emotions in times when they're actually alone.
Anyone have to add something to this?
Yes, I like to.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a classical actor, I played the part in Salome of John the Baptist. Okay? The opera, of course, is in German, and John the Baptist, you have to study it, and he turns out to be the cousin of Jesus. And I'm sure he's buried in Israel. And as the opera goes, I brought to you my head. It always pays to have your head with you. And here's the head of John the Baptist. Looks a little bit like me. They put a beard on it. And it just seems that you have a certain category of singing. And I told you what that was, a held in character baritone. And if you're employed in an opera house, especially in Germany, you have to be able to sing John the Baptist. It's a certain type of role. So I played the part, and I have to tell you, it made me a stronger believer in God. When the roles you play, you have to try to express yourself, and you know that the righteous people are going to be living in the next world. And so it comes out in the text that you're singing and the parts that you're playing. All right, it's a little unusual to show you my head, but they give you a head so you can guess it around. Wherever they perform Salome, I can go and perform it. I have my head. They don't have to make it the opera house.
Okay, so do we all agree that arts, text, writing, literature, music, painting transcends emotions? Yes? Let's talk about how this happens. And I want to also talk with Richard Konicki about this here for a second, because we're here all musicians. So this is, I know you're a musician too, Richard Konicki, I know that, but you also wrote a book about something very different, namely money. And I have even the book here, The Crucifixion of Capital. Let me hang it in, let me show it here in the camera. So when you write, Richard, when you wrote the book, where was the transcending element when you wrote the book? Oh, we can't hear you. We've lost the tone. We cannot. That doesn't work. I think we lost him. All right, let's move on here. Let's focus on...
Oh, you're muted.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear us now?
Yeah, Signa had me muted, so I was kind of talking to myself there for a moment. But if you can hear me, that'd
Yes.
be great to get a little hello from everybody.
Yes.
And I want to thank everybody for being on your show, and especially you, Nicolette, on a Sunday in the summertime. And we're sitting in our truck. It's steaming hot outside, and we're trying to keep cool with the AC on and be a part of the show. But what I'd like to say about the writing that you asked about, I think one of the largest things for me is separating between things like good and bad, and allowing yourself to completely open and accept the perfection of the so-called, good or the bad, and ultimately. That helps you build and refine your music, your art, your painting, your writing, your poetry, whatever it may be. And I think when we let go of that impression of good and bad, we can truly become empowered in saying it the way that we see it.
Now, Richard, Goethe, who's a famous writer, of course, German writer, but he is a famous writer, once said that, let me pull this up here, the soul that sees beauty may sometimes walk alone. Have you experienced that?
Well, I've heard the expression, it's lonely at the top all of the time, and I'm willing to accept that as a result of the work and the following in the sense of what I do. So, yeah.
Yeah, because I thought particularly for you, you know, your book is such a, well, it's very challenging to conceptual thinking, of course. It talks about a world without money, talking about walking alone. That seems to me that this is really something, it took you into an area where you did walk quite alone for a while.
Well, the book in its essence was 12 years in the making. And a large part of that was because there's no research material available on a world with no money. So therefore, in again, finding what I call, or what we would like to perhaps talk about, is the truth. And I think any artist is reaching for that in their work. If you look at any, you know, amazing painter, or you look at, you know, Galileo, and you look at all sorts of different people who, throughout centuries of expression, imagine how, you know, people that would have a completely different, because it would be perhaps a more centered, maybe perhaps even a more religious perspective on, you know, deciding what's good and bad. And you'll see all sorts of, you know, different cases where they made alterations or changed things or banned things. And I think that's just a part of what we do, but I think that also makes us to be determinedly stronger.
Yeah, you know what I think is probably the case. I think when people engage in arts, whether this is painting, whether this is writing, whether this is singing, there is such a thing as devotion. And in German, we actually have a beautiful, beautiful word for that I think captures it. It's called Hingabe, which really is a little bit more than devotion. It really means you lose yourself, meaning the I, the ego, the limitations, for something that's greater, for something that's in you, for something that's greater. And that's the transcending part. So let's, have you, I'm sure all of you probably have experienced this at some point, right?
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about this transcending emotions, because I think that is something that can be very powerful when you look at the current climate that we're in, when you look at the fear factor that holds everyone in a grip. Doesn't matter where you stand, it's just there. So how do we make the switch from being so captured and kept and caged in a way in this lower vibration to transcend to a higher vibration, which really gets us more into our imagination, into more of our spiritual side, into more of the beauty side, how we experience that. How do we get from point A, being kept, listening to negativity, listening to the news, getting whatever you see, fear of death, fear of dying, fear of COVID, whatever, fear of unemployment. How do we tap more into this beautiful state of art to really lose ourself in a way and transcend to the other side? Kate, you want to take the stab on that?
I'll speak about it very personally, Nicolette, because I think we get stuck when we're fearful and when we're grieving. You know, obviously grief is something experienced worldwide at the moment, and the anger and the fear of the unknown, or and the sadness and sorrow of loss, I think, is one of the most profound human experiences where we risk getting stuck. And I think the ability to play through, as a musician, to play through that and to allow that to just be. My tradition as an Irish person is to play a lament. And when my father passed away, I played every Irish lament I could find for about a year, and it lifted. And then I switched into much more lively, sort of Baroque or Irish fiddle tunes or jigs or other things, which really put the brainwaves in a different place, and you're vibrating at a different level.
Yeah.
If we look at the brain structure, in fact, it's the lower right cortex where those emotions of fear and sort of protection reside. And it's actually in the upper cortex that we begin to then look at the creativity and the imagination. So I think it's finding the thing that helps you move from that lower cortex, from those feelings of being stuck. And for everybody, it's going to be different. And it goes back to what they listen to and when those switches were turned on in their brains.
Yeah, but there is such a thing as a story arc, Bill, right? Why don't you walk us through the story arc, this walking through transcending, this tension and release?
Yes, and I'll let it go at that. Yes, I'm fascinated by this conversation. So Goethe was right, with one exception. It's not sometimes, it's always. And we better have ways of dealing with always, right? So the story arc that you're talking about, it's a very natural thing to see a sort of a wave cresting and then releasing. And music is all about that tension and release. It builds to a place, like in the opera, you're all building to the big moment of climax, and then it releases. There are lots of little climaxes along the way, but the big moment, right, is the one that you get to. And in the concert where everybody lights their lighter, like we used to do, the big ballad right before it turns into the ride to the end. This tension and release thing is very much a part of how we as human beings are. And we resonate to those things. Once upon a time, we know what's going to happen, right? There's going to be a story. It's going to build to some sort of complicated climax, and then it's going to release, and we're all going to live happily ever after. And that very natural part of us, of human beings, is also how we experience emotion. It comes on, and then it rises to a peak, and then it releases. And music, of course, is great for guiding that. Story is great for guiding that. There's physiology on this. Amazing guy, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote the book Body Keeps the Score. It talks about how this energy resides in us until we release it. And it's a mistake in his terms to compress the energy, to not have a happily ever after, to not have the release of the energy. And if we are willing to go through that process, that whole arc of the story from beginning to end, it can be a very satisfying experience for us, regardless of whether that's an experience of joy or experience of sadness or experience of fear or anger.
Yeah.
And our language and our ability to do that arc with the bigger emotions has been limited by our education, basically. We've been taught to not feel those things. Don't be angry, Billy. Don't be too afraid. And that's not what we do. We as resonators, we do fear, we do anger, we can. And our inability to sort of be fluent in that language is compressing us into a place where we're more susceptible than we would be. I mean, imagine trying to learn English for the first time and you don't have words to everything that you already know in your native language. This is like learning the language of anger, learning the language of fear, learning the language of sadness. You need to have those ways of being able to relate in the world with other people who experience those emotions too. And once you connect on the language, then it becomes very easy and you can have the conversation, and it's much less scary. But it's a difficult process. It takes work.
Yeah. So Bill, the story arc, does that help you? You actually build with the story arc to go from what Kate said, that lower cortex, to actually transcend and then bypass its whole way to get to the higher one?
Well, I have to take this out of the head for a moment because emotion is here in the heart.
Yeah.
That's where we feel it. ASMR, that wonderful spine tingling, that's happening, in our bodies. And then there's a lot more, neurotransmitters are received in our gut as well as in our brain. So all of these things that are part of how we feel, of how we experience life, are way below the brain. They actually happen inside of us. When you feel that welling up of emotion, that's coming from a response that's in your body. So once we unlock our ability to feel fully, and we can experience those things in our whole body, the experience of emotion becomes much more satisfying. It's not so much about what's happening up here. The brain's a great observer, and it's a great traffic cop, but the actual, the full body experience of life takes place below the neck.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to go. That's the language we want to be fluent in. You know,
Yeah.
when someone says to you, "Who are you?" You don't say, "Well, this is me." You say, "This is me," right? This is who I am.
And that actually brings me right over.
That's where we go.
Yeah, and that actually brings me right over to Signe, because Signe, you say your book is about the 7 steps in how to write your own song, right? So is this when Bill said, like, so what, when I listen to my heart, what's me? Are you helping people in your book, Signe, in really getting to that point and being able to answer it and say, this is me? This is my song?
Well, I believe that it does bring out what's inside of the person in a way that, you know, when you're in your heart, sometimes a song just flows through you. However, when you haven't done it before, sometimes it helps to go into the other side, into the thinking side, and have a step-by-step process to bring out the flow of the heart. So what I was doing in those 7 steps is, well, if you just follow this, you don't have to think about the steps. And through each step, you can bring out what your heart sings and what's inside of you through each step. And then once you've done it for a while, you don't need the 7 steps, and the songs will just start to flow automatically.
So anyone can do that?
I believe anyone can write a song.
That's really interesting. Now, Richard, I want to get back to your story of the coat aria. Richard Malone, I mean, on this one. I'd like to ask you to talk to us about what you felt in the moment when you actually sang the aria, when the Collini actually has to sell his coat to get medicine for Mimi. I know we're going to play the piece, but before we go into, can you briefly, just in a few words, describe what it was that you felt in that moment?
Well, you have to put yourself into the role. And it's La Boheme, and you're living with a lot of artists, and you don't have much money. And one of the troops gets very sick, Mimi, and you have to get medicine for her. It's an Italian opera. It's Verismo, where you actually sing feelings to an object. And
an object meaning the coat in that.
That's
instance.
right.
That's right, yes.
Okay, and you're singing as if it was your brother dying, which he did this morning, and you're singing to a coat. And why are you singing to the coat? Because you have to sell it. It's the only thing you have that's worth anything, and your close mate there is dying. And it's wintertime, and you're taking the coat and you're singing Vecchiazzimada, my old friend. Listen. And you talk about an old friend, your coat. For years, you've been keeping me warm. It was lovely to be part of you, and you part of me. But I have to sell you now. I have to get money so we can cure Mimi. Of course, she dies at the end. But the aria brings something of Verismo, where you're actually singing to a coat.
Yeah.
You know, and so I did it in a concert.
Yeah, we have actually the extract which we can play for a moment, but we only got the audio, so you're going to have to kind of, you know, we'll play it for you, and you'll see what you think.
Let me finish, because while I'm singing for these hundreds of people listening to the concert, there was one person in the audience that was coughing, and that's exactly when you're on stage and you actually hear Mimi coughing. And sure enough, in the aria, if you listen close enough, you'll hear someone coughing.
Yeah, but we need to play it if we want to play it now, because we only have 8 minutes left. So let's go play it.
For those of you who are not really opera people, I like to explain what I'm doing.
I'm telling them, I'm explaining to them what I'm going to sing.
Sells the only thing that's very close to him, the only thing that's worth anything, to get some money. for Mimi, who's dying. He sells his coat. Well, it's not a coat, it's only a jacket.
I had a jacket on.
But it was the time of Verismo, where they actually sing feelings to objects. And here I am, I'm singing to my faithful companion, my coat, goodbye.
Vecchia zimara senti, io resto al pianto a scendere il sacro monte o devi. Le mie grazie ricevi, noi non curvasti, utenti, oh, son nelle tue tasche, oh, menantri tranquilli, filosofi e poeti. Ora che giorni lieti fuggirti ti dico, addio fedele amico mio.
And this is actually how I think emotion travels much faster through music and song than you can ever express it by voice. When you just speak, it just doesn't come across that same way. It just doesn't. So let's talk. We have about 6 minutes left. I want to talk a little bit about making the connection and building the bridge in the heart for more empathy, for more feelings, for more expression in getting it out, and then also when we next time watch, these really sensationalist news, when you're in the grip of fear or whatsoever, how do we remind ourselves of that moment in saying, well, you know what, before I listen to all this crazy news or whatsoever, what I'm hearing, how do I actually turn it off and go to a song, be it my song, if we follow your steps, Signe, if you write your own song, or if you do a painting or whatsoever. So let's talk a little bit about the empathy part. Because I think when we heard Richard Malone just sing, you could literally feel what he was feeling. It's hard not to at this point. So Signe, when you, for example, when you sing and when you bring your emotions out, what is the difference when you sing versus when you just talk to us about how you feel?
Well, when I sing it, because it has the melody and the music behind it, it brings out that emotion more than just reading the lyrics.
Yeah.
I mean, the lyrics contain a certain amount of emotion, like in poetry. You still feel that emotion when you're reading a poem. And I believe that music takes that to a whole other level, because you've got the notes, you've got the way the person's singing it, and you can hear the emotion in their voice. You can hear sometimes a songwriter sings a song that is so connected with how the experience that they went through, that they even start to have tears in their eyes, and they feel that excitement if it's an exciting song, and that comes across in the way they sing the song.
Bill, I'm sure you got something to add on this one.
I love it. To compress the science down very quickly, when you're able to connect anything to music, the thing you've connected is improved exponentially. So if empathy is your thing and you can find a song that pulls up the empathy inside of you that's there, and use that song to enliven your empathy, you just get such a pop from that experience. And, lots of neuroscience behind that. Obviously, lots of experience from lots of musicians behind that. And I think that's what Richard is talking about. When he goes to perform, he has to find internally how to bring up the thing that the music will enliven so that the audience is able to receive it fully. And that's what we do with music, right? We connect the music to the purpose. Beautiful. And the purpose comes alive.
Very true.
Yeah, I think that is very true. So when you look at this, where we're at today, so we have that, what's internally vibrating, resonating with you. We have the empathy, we have the feelings on the one hand. We have the algorithms and the cold-hearted, I have to say cold-hearted because they are cold-hearted metrics on the other. So that still leaves us with feeling this beautiful moment where you bring the internal stuff out, with then suddenly looking at something that's very cold, such as metrics, for example. We still haven't built the bridge, and we only have 2 minutes left. So how do we build the bridge?
I think the bridge is intrinsic in the act of making music. That is, it uses all dimensions, and so maybe we have to transcend thinking about cold hard metrics and think about the whole.
So that's integrating the paradox.
Exactly, it's integrating the whole experience.
Yeah.
And I think part of the issue of empathy too is understanding and reaching people in their traditions, and being able to listen to the sentiments they express through whatever genres that represent their realm of experience. That is also another really powerful way to create a bridge. When you're reaching beyond your own repertoire, your own genre, your own tradition, and you're able to captivate and capture the sentiments that others express through theirs. I think there's something really transcendent in that as well.
That's very nicely said. Any final words? So give us the last 2 words or so, Richard Malone, and then Signe and Richard Kiernicki, and Bill, but we have to be quick in terms of what you want the audience to remember from how to integrate the paradox, or how to bring out what's in you.
Right. If you're a human being, you have it inside of us. We were built this way. You just have to let it come out.
All right.
Have all of these qualities inside of us, and you need someone to bring it out.
All right. Signe, final word?
You do have the song inside of you, and even if you don't know how to do it, just do it. And when you go ahead and do it, then the song comes out.
That's right.
Bill? Oh, we lost Bill. Richard Kiernicki, you got a final word for us very quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. It's following your inner voice and knowing exactly how to hear your heart versus your brain, because your brain will create the fear. And as pretty much everyone else has said, the reality is that when we feel the love inside, we know and we're confident.
Then it will come out. Thank you very much for all of you. We're at the end of our time. That was a little bit of La Boheme because we were kind of like artists coming together on this one too, and make it work and put it together. So thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful evening. Have a good night.
Lovely to see you. Thank you.
You too. Good night.